Would you be surprised if I told you that a young man who has doubts and leaves Islam would be scared to tell others that he left Islam, even in the UK? How does a teenager come to such a conclusion? What causes this silencing effect on doubters? This is just one example of how this religion suppresses criticism so that it can continue to grow. Murad, who is of Bangladeshi background, lives in Australia but grew up in the UK, is going to share with us how this happened to him.
I grew up Muslim. My family from Bangladesh. We fled I was born during the war, the Bangladesh War for Independence, the Liberation War, as it's called sometimes. And my family fled the aftermath of the war we went to England. And I grew up there, grew up as a Muslim. Used to go to the mosque, used to go to the biggest mosque in London at the time, and grew up, within the faith, and believed. Like I was a massive believer at the time, but I always had questions, and a lot of the questions didn't get answered, and a lot of the questions weren't even allowed to be asked. And I think this is an important thing to kind of keep in mind as we go through this talk is that central idea that a lot of doubting, skepticism and stuff inside me, and I saw in other people, there were no discussions around these kind of ideas of, if I apply logic to this question, or if I apply logic to this idea that I'm being taught, why are we not allowed to discuss it? Why does it get met with so much shutting down of discussion, shutting down of debate? There are certain lines of thought that were forbidden, essentially. That's what it, felt like growing up. So, I started to question probably in my teens, and found no avenue to have a frank, open, honest, accepting discussion with anybody, with people at the Quran classes I used to go to. I think there was a level of fear that prevented people from talking about their doubts. I think that's a fair point to make, and I think that's probably quite recognisable to a lot of people who are watching now. Is that idea that we can't talk about this, any questions that we have. And so then, as I grew up, I essentially got to the point where I no longer believed, but everything I was doing was kind of pretending to people that I believed. And so I essentially found myself, as we say now, in the closet of being an apostate. But
why did
still
you and why was that? Was that like, did you feel you had to do that, or what was the situation?
I think I've kind of tried to figure this out over the years, and I think a couple of things. One was definitely fear, because growing up, if we put a foot wrong, going, in Quran classes, if you put a foot wrong, or if you ask the wrong question, or if you're a bit cheeky or whatever, we'd essentially receive, corporal punishment. You'd get a beating. You'd get, we had to do little things like holding books out at the ends of our hands, kind of like stress positions, all these kind of things that make little children afraid. Then the other thing would be the idea of hell, which is pretty scary, especially when you're a kid, because, I used to believe that. I used to literally believe that if I question, if I speak my true mind, then there's something wrong with me. There's something evil about me. But there wasn't. It's just a curious, inquisitive mind that children have, to try and figure out the world like anybody else. Children are trying to figure out, how does the world work? How does the universe work?
It's funny how, like, you can ask a question and the answer is like, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim." Like, I seek refuge in Allah from shaitan. Like, that's the answer you get to like some of the questions, meaning like, don't go there. Like, let's not talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. There's a there's a careful kind of ring fencing of your thoughts
Yeah.
to prevent you from going out into the realm of the disbeliever. So we have to have this ring fencing of thought in order to keep people within the faithful. And I think that was the thing that used to worry me, as I grew up. Um, and after all this questioning, turning around, turning it over and over in my head, I eventually decided in myself, without telling anybody, without telling a soul, because without telling a soul, I decided, okay, well, I don't actually believe any of this anymore. I
Mm.
don't believe that Allah is as described in the Quran at first, when I kind of became agnostic.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe that Muhammad is anything but
Mm-hmm.
just an ordinary man with all his, qualities and failings and problems and weaknesses, just like any other human being.
Yeah.
Um, and once that happens, then the whole religion kind of really doesn't make sense. Once I kind of got to the point of he's just a man.
Yeah.
He didn't have any special powers. He didn't have any special connection to the divine any more than, if the divine exists, any more than anybody else.
Yeah.
And so then that made me think, okay, well, I can't really honestly say that I believe this anymore. Um, but when I left, I did it by stealth. I kind of just stopped believing, kept on, you know, pretending as I was,
Yeah.
which
How old were you? Like, when was this?
I think eventually this would have been just over 20 years ago
Oh,
so
okay.
I would have been late 20s.
Oh, okay. So you were
Yeah. So
definitely
yeah,
an
just
adult. You definitely,
mm,
yeah,
mm,
like you were not a kid. You knew,
no,
you've kind of at that point you've kind of explored the world. You're still looking, still learning. 21 is
yeah,
quite a young age, and that's quite impressive because I actually converted to Islam, was Sunni Islam,
yeah.
around that age, around 18.
Around that age, yeah,
But it's
yeah.
it's an age that
Well,
people
if
are
it,
looking, right? Like you're searching for
yeah,
the truth, you're
yeah,
looking for something, you're looking for a bigger piece of the puzzle, you're trying to figure it out. So for
yeah,
me, it was Islam, but for you, it was like, okay, the other way.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think the if I look at, say, I don't know if you've ever heard of Erickson, who wrote a thesis on the idea of psychosocial stages of development in humans.
Mhm.
And he said, at certain ages, we have certain kinds of development, and some of them are around the 20s, around ideas of identity, ideas of kind of like purpose and meaning, etc., all of these things. And then they change and shift as we get older. He saw kind of parallels between lots of different people and kind of said, oh yeah, that's how it happens, and it will happen at certain ages for people. Some people
Right.
will obviously develop at different times and have different things come up for them, but those kind of big questions, I guess, are
Yeah.
things that we think about at certain ages a lot more than others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. So then you found your way out of Islam. You felt
Mm,
some sort of social pressure to kind of not say this out loud, would you say?
yeah, definitely,
And,
definitely.
and this was
I
in
I'll
like
tell you
London?
sorry.
This was in London at the time?
Yeah, this was in
Oh,
London.
okay.
One of the of one of the sort of like pivotal moments that made me realize that I was afraid to speak up and to say anything was the whole Salman Rushdie affair,
Oh.
um, and Satanic Verses. So he'd written the Satanic Verses. This was what, late 80s, and I remember watching a show which was a debate show with a guy called Jeffrey Robertson,
Mm-hmm.
who is an Australian lawyer, and he had a show which was kind of like a show about hypothetical questions that people would ask, and then the panel would discuss them. And this was just after Satanic Verses and the fatwa on Salman Rushdie.
Mhm.
And on the show was Yusuf Islam, also known as Cat Stevens. And Jeffrey Robertson put the question to him, you know, in a perfect Islamic state, would Salman Rushdie be, you know, should he be killed?
Mhm.
And Yusuf Islam essentially said yes.
Wow.
He said yes, because of his blasphemy, he should be killed.
Gee.
Now, the irony of this, or the ironic kind of situation I found myself in, was that going to the mosque that I went to, I used to see Yusuf Islam
Yeah.
walking around. So we'd walk around and people would say to me, oh, look, there's that guy. He used to be Cat Stevens. He used to be, you know, big singer. And then he converted to Islam. And now look at him. He actually set up a school, or helped to fund a school, an Islamic school in London.
Yeah.
And, you know, so like I used to see him at the mosque. And then I used to think, oh, that man thinks that if you have blasphemous thoughts or blasphemous ideas, you should be dead.
Yeah.
And so that's going through my head as a, you know, as a teenager, and I'm thinking,
Wow.
oh, I have to stay quiet about this stuff, you know, like who's going to accept that? Like if I say, well, actually, there's no way Muhammad flew on the back of, you know, an animal.
Burak.
You know, yeah, exactly. There's no way. All of these things, they didn't make sense.
Yep.
Solomon didn't talk to ants. You know, all of these kind of things. Like all of these ideas that I had, like they just didn't fit with reality.
Yeah.
And when you discuss them, this is where the debate ends up: is that, oh no, you can't say these things. You can't say what Salman Rushdie said without getting a death penalty, you know, applied to your head. So I kept quiet.
Do check out the full video linked below. Finally, if you're enjoying this content, please consider supporting me. Monthly support allows me to plan my efforts and gives me a financial base that I can use to spend more time and energy on this project. Currently, I have just around 30 monthly supporters out of the thousands who watch and benefit from my videos. Please help me to increase that number. If you can't afford a monthly donation, please consider a one-time donation. I'll link to my support page below. Thanks for watching. This is Abdullah Samir signing out.